Today on the program, the House of Representatives is poised to vote on the reconciliation bill that will, among other things, hire 87,000 more IRS agents. We'll tell you about that today. In addition, legislators in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have called for the acting education secretary to resign over content on the website. What has these legislators outraged? We'll tell you about that today. Also, Reverend Al Sharpton says that because we can choose between heaven and hell, that means the Bible is pro-choice on abortion also. Is that true? We'll have that conversation with David Clausen from our Center for Biblical Worldview as we continue our efforts to think biblically about everything. But first, our headlines for today. Deadlines have been slow to emerge regarding the FBI raid on former President Trump's Mar-A-Lago residence, with Republican officials calling on both the FBI and the Attorney General to give us answers on this incident that is unprecedented in U.S. history. Was the search warranted? Is it driven by politics? Is it fair to question the legitimacy of our nation's top law enforcement institutions? Joining me now to talk about this is U.S. Representative Pat Fallon, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee and Oversight Committee. He represents the 4th Congressional District in the great state of Texas. Congressman Fallon, welcome back to the show.
Joseph, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We've had a few days now to absorb the news of the FBI raid of President Trump's home in Florida. What have you learned? Are you feeling better or worse about the initial decision by the FBI?
Really, honestly, Joseph, worse. I just am still so in shock about this, as you said, unprecedented move. And I ironically had planned dinner with President Trump 2 nights ago. It was planned for about a month. So I got to speak with him directly about it. It was him and myself and about 8 other members of Congress. And he's flabbergasted as well. It's clearly a political persecution. I don't know why. They still haven't given us any reasons. I don't know why you have to be so foggy and mysterious about this. If it's something that, as they claim, is warranted and just, then why not unseal all of the documents and the warrant and et cetera? But they haven't. And it's just, I'm highly suspicious of this move by the FBI and the Department of Justice.
I think the point you make there, that the longer the public goes without an explanation, the more suspicious we become. Senator Josh Hawley made a similar point this week. Let's play clip 1.
This judge seems like he's a rabid partisan from what we're learning, but I lay the real blame for this at the feet of the FBI, the DOJ, Merrick Garland, and Joe Biden. Congressman
Fallon, do you agree with that?
You know what? 100% what the senator from Missouri has said. When you're talking about something that's never been done before, I think you should take great care, if it's truly just and not something that's politically driven, to explain to the American people and Congress as well, as to why you're doing this, and show the evidence and show why you have these suspicions and why your suspicions are just. It's never happened before. And if you can rest assured, if it was Barack Obama or Bill Clinton that was a target like this, the mainstream media would be up in arms, and you could hear them from rooftops and mountaintops demanding answers.
And the longer we go without those answers, it almost seems that this is being designed to generate a response, because if you wanted to generate a response, I don't know what you would do differently, because it does seem obvious that when you do something that's never been done before in over 200 years of U.S. history, that if you wanted to make sure that people understood that you were being rational, that you were behaving appropriately, even if it was unprecedented, that you would take the time to explain, to calm people's nerves. But so far, 3 days after this happened, everything that the administration is doing does seem designed to elicit suspicion, I'll say. Now, you sit on the House Oversight Committee. How do you think Congress should be responding to this?
Well, as we know, with Nancy Pelosi at the helm, nothing's going to be done until we can throw the Democrats out of, at least out of the majority. And come January, I've already spoken with Ranking Member Comer, and leadership. And we are going to have hearings because we're going to get to the bottom of it. Merrick Garland's going to be called, to testify in front of the Oversight Committee. And so is Director Wray of the FBI and anyone and everyone else that's been involved in this case. So again, the American people can know the truth.
The National Archives are involved in this because the story that we have heard is that the purpose of this raid was because there were documents that President Trump had that belonged at the National Archives. Is there any chance that they could speak independently and perhaps provide some answers?
Well, the Oversight Committee has oversight directly over the archives and we're the National Archives. And we are going to, again, we have to wait until we have a Republican majority, but we're going to also bring them in front of the committee and ask them what's going on here, because it didn't, if they don't find Jimmy Hoffa's body at Mar-A-Lago, they have some real explaining to do. And we have Sandy Berger, Bill Clinton's former national security advisor, being caught red-handed on camera, stuffing classified documents in his socks. And he got a pass. And this is a former president of the United States that is entitled to certain privileges, and so to have an FBI raid on a former president's home because of possibly, allegedly, some documents, it just smells really fishy, Joseph. It really does.
And I think the American public is coming to that conclusion as well. And we will discuss this more, but there's a couple other stories I want to get with you, to discuss with you. Texas, of course, Governor Abbott from Texas is making some waves around the country because of his decision to bus immigrants to New York City and Washington, D.C. What's your reaction to those developments?
Oh, I think that's a brilliant idea from Governor Abbott. And I've asked and suggested that they also have express buses to go to San Francisco into Nancy Pelosi's neighborhood and Joe Biden's beach home in Delaware and Chuck Schumer's mansion in New York. I think it's rather interesting and the epitome of hypocrisy to hear Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. get several hundred migrants, maybe a few thousand, to go to Washington. I don't know what the exact number is. And then she says, my God, we can't handle this. We don't have the resources. This is a humanitarian crisis. You know what, Mayor? Cry me a river. How about several million that have come into the state of Texas? And it's one of those things. It's kind of the limousine liberal stereotype of not in my backyard.
Yeah. It does seem to be that kind of a component, and it's not just Mayor Bowser. Here's what New York City Mayor Eric Adams had to say about the governor of Texas.
I know he thinks he's Clint Eastwood, but he's not. He is a anti-American governor that is really going against everything we stand for. And I am going to do everything feasible to make sure people of Texas realize how harmful he is to us globally. He's a global embarrassment because this is not what we do as Americans.
Congressman Fallon, does sending recent illegal immigrants to New York City, does that make Governor Abbott a global embarrassment?
Eric Adams is a clown. This is ridiculous. Him and his party, New York is a sanctuary city. Him and his party have been encouraging mass unlawful migration for decades. And then when they just have a slight taste of the direct consequence of an open and immoral border, he starts using that kind of anti-American rhetoric. That is ridiculous. Let's just look at the tail of the tape, Joseph. In April of this year, we had the worst month we've ever seen at the southern border, 234,000 illegal border crossings. And that's not counting the 70 or 80,000 known gotaways where the Border Patrol saw them, but they couldn't engage them because they were overwhelmed with the people they were processing at that very moment. Only to be eclipsed in May by nearly 240,000 illegal border crossings, which then is now our historical worst that we've ever seen. That is, the last April President Trump was in office, this April was 1,258% worse. This May was 930% worse. So it's about 10 times worse under Joe Biden than it was under President Trump. President Trump turned that flood into a trickle, and then Joe Biden, with his silly, ridiculous, and really it's just stupefyingly naive policies, or maybe it's deliberate, I don't know, sticking his head in the sand. Under Joe Biden's watch, there's been 3.9 million people that have crossed that border illegally in a year and a half. That is the entire state of Oklahoma. We are overwhelmed in Texas. Joe Biden has made every state a border state. And this is an absolute humanitarian crisis. And the fault lays at the blame of Joe Biden and the Democrats. So says the Mexican president Obrador, by the way. And so said the Guatemalan president as well. They're right.
It does make you wonder how these blue state governors and, in these cases, mayors would feel if they lived on the border that absorbed 99% of the impact of our border policy. But Congressman Fallon, one other issue I want to get to you with, because you serve on the House Armed Services Committee. It would be headlines, but for everything else going on in the country. China's posture towards Taiwan is growing increasingly aggressive. How concerned are you?
Extraordinarily concerned. And I'll tell you this, Joseph, and a lot of Americans don't, we have big giant moats. I joke about it. We have the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, and a lot of people are very Americentric in our worldviews. But we have to understand what really is going on and what the communists in Beijing are trying to do with our friends in Taiwan. Taiwan's an island, sits off the coast of China, about 100 miles off the coast, 23 million people that live there. The communists, by the way, have never been in control of Taiwan. I think that's kind of ironic considering their ironclad claims, allegedly, to the island. But what they've done, like under President Trump, they flew about 300 sorties a year into the Taiwanese defense exclusionary zone, which was, kind of off the coast of Taiwan. They do that to probe the Taiwanese defenses, and also they're only a nation of 23 million, to exhaust their resources and, exhaust their pilots as well. Well, under Joe Biden, that went up to 1,000. That ballooned up to 1,000 sorties a year. And if I said a day, I meant a year. And then this year, it's already been nearly 600. So yes, I'm very concerned, and we cannot allow the communists to cross the straits.
Congressman Fallon, we are out of time. We share your concern, and we will continue to track that. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Joseph. God bless. Take care.